Everybody for joining us this afternoon. So in regard to the members of the Wolverine Watchmen that were convicted today on all charges, these are the first convictions under Michigan's anti-terrorism law, and also a victory for the rule of law and the safety of all Michiganders. The prosecution of these cases prevented horrific acts from taking the lives of innocent people. Terrorist attacks and mass shootings are not spontaneous events. They're the result of planning, plotting, and amassing resources in a build-up to violent acts. So for all of us, our realities have been punctured by the real threat of violence on a mass scale. And we see news reports about mass shootings and plots to inflict violence on innocent people in our own country, and of course in our own state. If investigators and prosecutors had known about the events leading up to the tragedy in Oxford, for instance, they could have intervened and prevented the massacre of innocent students. So instead of only reacting to known threats, it is so crucial and imperative that law enforcement be proactive in order to save lives and prevent crimes. My office will not simply sit idly by and watch while armed terrorists plan acts of civil unrest with the intent of causing mayhem. They are not merely acts of harmless chatter and wishful thinking. These are criminal conspiracies to conduct dangerous acts. And it's incumbent upon law enforcement to treat this activity as such. Make no mistake, quick actions of law enforcement in this case saved lives. And I'm very pleased that the jury clearly understood that. And I want to thank the court, and I want to thank the jury for their commitment to this process and for their service during the course of the trial. The investigation and successful prosecution are the result of law enforcement agencies working together. And I'd like to take a moment to recognize and thank the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and specifically James Taraska, Special Agent in Charge, Josh Hawkshertz, who's the Assistant Special Agent in Charge, Special Agent Henrik Impola, Special Agent Jason Chambers, Special Agent Chris Tarrant, Special Agent Adam Iris, and from the Michigan State Police, Colonel Joseph Gasper, Lieutenant Brian Russell, and most of all, honestly, I want to thank some of the most incredible prosecutors that I have ever had the honor of working with in my career. And the prosecutors of the Department of Attorney General are just simply the best. And they worked tirelessly on this case, and they did so to protect people all around the state of Michigan. So the head of our Hate Crimes and Domestic Terrorism Unit, Assistant AG Sunitha Dadamani, Assistant AG William Ralston, and Assistant AG John Pallas. All of you guys did such a tremendous job. It is such an honor to be able to serve alongside the three of you. Congratulations on a job well done. I think at the end of the day, we'll never know how many lives you saved as a result of the work that you did on this case. So I want to go over some details because I know that all of you have questions, and I think it'd be easiest for me just to review. But obviously, you know, for the three members of the Wolverine Watchmen that were convicted and again found guilty on all charges today by a Jackson County juror, you have Joseph Morrison, Paul Beller, and Pete Musical. And Joseph Morrison was convicted of gang membership, which is a 20-year felony that maybe served as a consecutive sentence for providing material support for a terrorist act, and also carrying or possessing a firearm during the commission of a felony. And for felony firearm, it's a 2-year mandatory consecutive sentence to any other counts or any other charges. For Paul Beller of Milford, he was convicted of providing material support for a terrorist act, a 20-year felony, and or a $20,000 fine. Gang membership, a 20-year felony, which may be served as a consecutive sentence, and felony firearm, again, a 2-year consecutive sentence. Pete Musico of Munith was convicted of gang membership, 20-year felony that may be served as a consecutive sentence, providing material support for a terrorist act, again, a 20-year felony, and felony firearm. I just to review in terms of these cases, both federally And in state court, obviously all three of these defendants will have to be sentenced, and I'll allow AG Dadamani to give us the sentencing date on that. But for the other defendants, there are 5 defendants that remain who are awaiting a decision on the bind over from the preliminary exam in Antrim County. Those are Sean Fix, Michael Null, William Null, Brian Higgins, and Eric Molitor. Also, of course, you have the federal cases where you had Ty Garbin, who pled guilty and received 30 months in prison. Caleb Franks, who pled guilty, received 48 months in prison. Adam Fox, who was found guilty at trial, he's to be sentenced on December 12th. Barry Croft, who was found guilty at trial, who was to be sentenced on December 28th. And then you had Brandon Caserta and Daniel Harris, who were both found not guilty at the federal trial. So that is a bit of an update as to where we are right now. But with that, be happy to answer any questions that the media has.
Thank you, Attorney General. I'm going to go to Ed White for the first question. Ed, you can unmute yourself. Pardon me.
Thank you. You mentioned Ty Garbin, who was a member of the Watchmen, quickly cooperated with federal authorities, and of course pleaded guilty and was a critical witness in federal court. Why wasn't he called in the Jackson case? There was maybe some indication that he didn't testify because he wasn't offered immunity from any state crimes. Can you please explain why he wasn't called?
I'm going to throw this over to Sita Dadamani. You want to answer that question if you can?
Sorry, I'm having connectivity issues. I apologize.
We can hear you, Sita, if it's easier to use your audio and not your video for connectivity reasons.
Are either John or Bill available, or are you guys all at the same location with the same connectivity issues?
Hey, good afternoon, Attorney General. I'm available.
Bill, is that you? I'm sorry, I can't see on here.
Yes, I am.
Okay, yeah, Bill, if you can answer that question, if it's appropriate for you to answer it.
Yeah, not a problem at all. Mr. White, Ty Garbin's testimony, we didn't require it from a proofs perspective to prove the charges in Jackson County. We elected not to call him as a witness. The defense did express some interest early on in calling him. They had the inability really to require him to testify because he had not been granted immunity, and he obviously was, if he had testified, would have possibly, been exposed to criminal liability, and that's the reason he wasn't called as a witness.
Bill, much appreciated.
Thanks. Next, we'll go to Dustin Dwyer for a question.
Hi, everyone. I heard you address the case in Antrim County. I'm just wondering if any of the attorneys can give us any more information on what's going on there. The delayed bind-over decision just seems unusual to me, certainly compared to other cases. Can you just sort of describe what's happening there, what's in your motion, and what you expect to come from Judge Stepka there in the coming weeks?
I could answer that, ma'am, if you'd like. Sorry, I won't put my camera on just to make sure I'm connected okay, and hopefully you all can hear me. So we had almost a week-long preliminary exam, and usually we've seen that judges bind over, make a decision about that at the end of testimony. The court wished to have
a closer look at how inflation is forcing people on a fixed income to make some tough choices.
Thank you. The court asked us to brief the issue before it makes a decision and gave time for us to acquire the transcripts of the hearing so we could cite to that. We have acquired those transcripts at an expedited pace, and then John Pallas has filed our brief where we are asking for a bind over on all charges that we have filed. I believe it was last week. John, please correct me if I'm wrong. And from there, the court has given the defense 21 days to answer that, and then will give us another period of time for us to respond to their answer. And then a date will be set where we will have argument, and then hopefully the court will make its decision. That's where we stand right now. So we do not have a date for that yet.
Just one correction, Sita, just to make sure we're saying everything accurately. That was filed on Monday.
Thank you, John.
Dustin, does that answer that question for you?
Yes, if I could just, does anything in Jackson County affect that? Will you be filing anything? Is there any concerns about these men being out on tethers or being out on bond given the verdict that we've seen in Jackson County? Is there anything you expect to file because of this verdict?
We'll be consulting about that and coming to a decision.
And Sita, I'm sorry, what is the sentencing date?
The sentencing date is December 15th in Jackson County.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'll go to Charlie Langdon with a question.
Okay, there I am. I'd like to know, tell me, I thought that the defense was not allowed to argue entrapment, and I'm just a little unclear. First of all, what was the judge ruling? I understand there was a special jury instruction at some point, but could you clarify, did the defense, were they allowed to argue entrapment? Thank you.
Thank you. That's a matter of law for the judge to decide and not a matter of the jury to decide. And so we were able to get a special instruction that instructed the jury that that was not within their purview. And so we were able to get that instruction, and they were read that instruction. But there was a lot of implication during the course of the trial from the defense that our informant or had pushed them into these actions. And because they argued that without calling it entrapment, we were able to receive that instruction to clarify to the jury that entrapment was not an issue that they were to decide.
Thank you, and thank you, Charlie. And next I'm going to go to, and I apologize if I don't pronounce your name correctly, Tanaya.
Perfect, thank you. So, question coming from the WILX newsroom. With this case done and now moving on to the other case, do you feel you get more convictions?
So let me try to answer that question. Obviously, sometimes you have some of the same evidence that's presented as, it applies to all defendants. Sometimes there is evidence that is individual to particular defendants. And obviously, there'll be some overlap, and there'll be different testimony as well that is applicable. And also, you never know what jury you're going to get. You're always selecting a different jury, and you don't know what their feelings are going to be about any particular evidence. But I will say this, I reviewed all of the testimony and all the evidence that was presented by my department during the course of this case. This is an incredibly strong case. And I had every confidence in the world that the jury would do the right thing. They would come back with convictions on all three of these defendants, and that is what occurred. But, I think that there has been some real misrepresentations made about this case over the course of time. And for those of you that paid attention to the trial and who saw the evidence that was submitted, I mean, we're talking about some very dangerous are people who called themselves domestic terrorists, who engaged in really hero worshiping for the likes of people like Timothy McVeigh and the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. It's not just that they wanted to kill the governor or kidnap the governor. It's not just that they wanted to kill government officials. It was law enforcement, right? These are individuals that wanted to murder members of law enforcement. And they went to extraordinary lengths to, put this, this group together in order to achieve those ends, and then these extraordinary security measures to keep what they were doing a secret. And this was not 1 act or 2 act or 3 acts. I mean, we're talking about, recruiting on a public Facebook page, moving to encrypted apps that they were using, vetting online, vetting in person, purging inactive members, and mandatory in-person trainings, compartmentalizing information on encrypted apps, and phones that were mandated to be in cars, phones in metal cans as a result of ensuring that they could keep the secrecy, face-to-face communications, warnings that the feds had infiltrated, and then reacting to that situation. You had so many different acts that took place, and the intent of these individuals was very, very clear from the beginning. And so I guess I'm saying that to tell you that when you review the testimony in this case, and when you review the massive amounts of evidence that was presented by the department's team, I think that it's inescapable, the conclusion that these individuals were guilty of all of the offenses that were charged. Jackson County is not known to have, particularly, I guess I would say, liberal juries. They tend to be a conservative bunch out in Jackson County. But I think what they saw here was that this is not a political matter, right? This was not about whether you're a Democrat or an independent or a Republican. These are individuals that didn't align themselves with any party at all. In fact, they were just anti-government altogether. And that's why they wanted to murder people who were in government. And so it's clear that the jury saw how dangerous that set of circumstances was, and that they wanted to make sure that these individuals were correctly convicted of the crimes that they had committed. And so I say all that with the hopes that all of you that are covering this will review, as part of your stories that you publish, many of the facts that were entered into evidence. So when you ask, what do we think, how might this affect the Antrim County case? I would say I believe that the Antrim County case is just as strong as the Jackson County case. And hopefully that's something that the judge that's considering the bindover will evaluate in terms of the evidence that was submitted to him and the briefing that was done. And I have every expectation that we'll be successful in the Antrim County cases as well.
The team up to clean up was canceled because of rain.
Thank you, AG Nessel. I think we've reached the end of all of our questions for today. So we thank everybody for participating, and we will see you next time. Thanks so much.